Before a clean power shot lands, David Benavidez is already taking pieces off a defense you can't see on a replay still. He steals rhythm first, then posture, then choice. Most high-volume fighters try to win by noise, throwing until the shell gives out. Benavidez wins by sequence, where every punch has a second job. He touches gloves to freeze hands, clips forearms to stiffen elbows, then wraps a hook around the outside to turn the guard instead of just hitting it. On paper, that looks like blocked offense. In the ring, it is forced labor. A calm high guard can handle one hard burst. A guard that has to be rebuilt every 2 seconds starts leaking through the joints. David Benavidez hunts those seams with a patient cruelty that feels methodical, almost engineered. He works in layers at the same time. There are scoring shots meant to land clean. There are structural shots meant to move wrists, lift elbows, and pin gloves in place. Then there are denial shots, punches thrown into the path of escape so the opponent cannot leave on his preferred angle. That is where his pressure becomes architecture. Watch his feet when he has a man near the ropes. He rarely runs straight in. He drifts to the outside of the lead foot, squares just enough to keep both hands alive, and turns the open side into a toll road. If the opponent slides, Benavidez punches through the exit lane. If the opponent plants, he lengthens the combination until stillness becomes punishment. That is why his attacks feel endless without looking wild. He is not emptying the tank in one burst and resetting at long range. He throws in linked clusters, where one cluster gathers data for the next. A right hand on the guard tells him how high the elbows are sitting. A dig to the body tests how fast the rear arm can drop and recover. A short uppercut appears when the gloves pinch tight at center line. Then he goes back upstairs, where the hands are now late by a fraction. Against movers, his feet do as much damage as his fists. David Benavidez removes comfort before he removes breath. Opponents keep circling, but each lap gets smaller because he keeps stepping outside the line of travel and dragging his rear foot into range without crossing himself. He is not chasing a head that keeps moving. He is shrinking the map the head can move on. When the map gets small, defense becomes triage. Caleb Plant showed how long elite eyes and disciplined clinches can survive under that kind of pressure. Even in that fight, Benavidez kept stacking touches until Plant's exits became rushed instead of clean. That shift is the hidden checkpoint. Benavidez does not need every early combination to hurt. He needs every early combination to charge interest. By the middle rounds, interest shows up as heavy calves, slower pivots, and a guard that closes just a beat too late. The Andrade finish followed the same blueprint at faster speed. David Benavidez narrowed the ring with his feet, then used layered volume to pin Andrade where he wanted him. When Andrade's shell climbed high, the body lane opened. When it dropped, the center line opened. When he tried to bounce out, denial met him at the door, and Benavidez re-entered before stance and balance were restored. The ending looked sudden in highlights. The breakdown was cumulative, built touch by touch. Another underrated weapon is how relaxed Benavidez stays while throwing so much. His shoulders stay loose, his eyes stay level. That lets him read return fire during his own combinations instead of after them. It is also why he keeps initiative after misses. Many pressure fighters miss, pause, and reset the exchange. David Benavidez misses and keeps speaking in the same sentence. A miss becomes a frame touch. The frame touch becomes a body shot. The body shot becomes a hook upstairs before the defender can recenter. Fighters describe that feeling as drowning because there is no obvious pause where order returns. Even his work out of clinches serves the same mission. He frames subtly, buys inches, and punches again before the opponent has rebuilt stance symmetry and guard shape. No dramatic break, no wasted step. Just pressure resumed at close, uncomfortable distance. By then, the guard is no longer a wall with a plan. It is a chain of emergency reactions. Emergency reactions burn faster than organized defense. That is why his late-round barrages look so violent even when the opponent's gloves are technically still high. The hands may be up. The structure under them has already been shifted, taxed, and denied clean exits for round after round. David Benavidez is not just a volume puncher winning on youth and engine. He is a structural attacker who scrambles defensive order, compresses decision time, and keeps opponents inside consequences. When those elements synchronize, the collapse rarely starts with one dramatic punch. It starts as procedure, then it becomes inevitable. What makes David Benavidez so difficult to derail is not just volume. It is the way he layers decisions on top of each other until defense starts to lag. He forces a man to answer range, rhythm, and angle at once, and whichever answer arrives late gets punished first. If the guard stays tight, he is happy to drill straight shots into gloves and forearms until the shell begins to fold inward. Once vision narrows behind the mitts, he slides in short hooks and compact uppercuts that need almost no room to change posture. If the opponent fires a hard counter to interrupt him, Benavidez often accepts that risk because his next two punches are already traveling. That is the real cost of exchanging with him. You are not only reacting to what he just threw, you are reacting to the trap your own reaction creates. His jab is the hinge for all of it. even when it does not look like a clean scoring jab. Sometimes it is a post on the chest that stops the pivot before it starts. Sometimes it is a touch upstairs that keeps the head centered for the right hand behind it. Sometimes it falls short on purpose, just enough to draw a flinch and lift the lead shoulder, then the left hand drops to the body seam. He uses that lead hand like a steering column more than a spear, and that is why the output stays organized. There is a subtle tempo game in his combinations that is easy to miss in real time. He will throw two at one cadence, pause a fraction, then place the third where the defensive count expects silence. Good guards are built to absorb predictable rhythm. David Benavidez keeps the pattern, but changes the punctuation inside it. By the moment a defender thinks the burst has ended, another shot arrives from a lane that was open a beat earlier. That is why seasoned veterans can look suddenly square against him. They recognize the words but not the sentence. His body attack deserves the same tactical credit as his head work. He is not digging downstairs only to cause pain. He is lowering elbows, freezing hips, and shrinking escape routes. A fresh fighter can concede one body shot and spin off the ropes. A fighter whose stance is being pinned by foot pressure usually cannot. So body punching and exit denial are not separate tools for Benavidez. They are one mechanism pulling from opposite ends. One drains spring from the legs. The other takes away runway. When both effects arrive together, even smart survival choices begin to vanish. Watch the clinches as rounds move on. Early clinches are often planned interruptions. Late clinches are frequently emergency breaks, grabbed before balance is truly back. Benavidez reads that distinction quickly. When he feels panic in the tie-up, he keeps his feet under him, frames for space, and resumes offense before the reset is complete. Those moments rarely become highlight clips, but they steal momentum in plain sight. He takes 10 quiet seconds, then 20, then whole stretches where the other corner cannot point to clean control. That accumulation creates the phase change people notice in his fights. For a while, the opponent looks composed and competitive in spots. Then exchanges start ending with David Benavidez, not beginning with him. That shift matters more than raw punch totals. The fighter who finishes exchanges usually controls where the next exchange happens. Hold that geographic control long enough, and even sharp defense becomes local. It may work in one pocket, then fail 2 steps later in the next. Against elite technicians, this is the central question. Can they keep exits clean after defending 3 and 4 layers, not just one? Can they reclaim center without paying for every step out? Can they make Benavidez reset fully instead of letting him miss forward into fresh offense? Those are precise demands, and he keeps asking them for 12 rounds. So when people reduce his pressure to high output, they are hearing noise, not studying machinery. The machinery is positional and deliberate. It is mechanical in its sequencing and ruthless in its discipline. He corrals, probes, shifts, and denies. Then he runs the cycle again with small corrections until resistance stops being organized. By then, the guard can still look intact on camera. The elbows stay near the ribs. The gloves stay near the temples. But the fighter inside that shell is no longer selecting good options. He is selecting which consequence arrives first. That is the collapse David Benavidez engineers. Not one dramatic detonation, but a controlled demolition, load point by load point, until the structure cannot redistribute pressure anymore. What looks like simple pressure from David Benavidez is usually a chain of small manipulations that start before the heavy punches arrive. He will post on the chest for an instant, freeze a pivot, and steal the half step that normally carries a man to safety. He will tap a lead glove like a rangefinder, not to score, but to map the lane he plans to occupy 2 beats later. Opponents often treat those touches as harmless information. By the time they recognize them as commands, Benavidez is already throwing into a guard shape he helped build. His rhythm is another trap that gets misunderstood. From ringside, he can seem to punch at one steady speed. Inside the exchange, the spacing changes by tiny fractions, and those fractions decide whether a block is early, late, or useless. A brief pause after the jab can pull a parry out too soon. Then the right hand arrives during the defender's recovery, when the glove is traveling home instead of braced at full extension. That is not just hand speed. That is timing aimed at the vulnerable seam between defensive actions. David Benavidez applies the same logic downstairs. The body shots are not only about visible pain or highlight moments. He targets the trunk of the stance so the head loses freedom later, after the legs stop bouncing cleanly. A left hook under the elbow can drain spring from both knees. A straight right to the solar plexus can force higher breathing and tighten the frame in the next exchange. Once a fighter's frame stiffens, he becomes easier to steer. Then the headshots begin to land cleaner without any dramatic tactical switch. Fans may see a sudden momentum swing in one burst. The real shift was prepared by 10 quieter punches that looked ordinary in real time. His work after he throws is just as important as the punches themselves. Many volume punchers drift upright for a split second to admire the sequence. Benavidez stays over the front line long enough to threaten continuation, and that threat delays the opponent's foot reset. Foot resets are where exits are created. If the feet cannot settle, the angle exists on paper but not in practice. He adds subtle head placement to that pressure. He is not always making exaggerated slips, yet he is often off-center enough that straight returns glance rather than land clean. Those near misses provoke harder, wider counters from men trying to reclaim ground. Wide counters take longer to return to guard. That extra travel time is where Benavidez re-enters with volume before balance is restored. So his pressure feels like it remembers. He punishes the first error, then punishes the correction, then punishes the correction to the correction. By the time the opponent finds an answer, the question has already changed shape. Even successful escapes are taxed. David Benavidez will clip a shoulder, touch the back arm, or stab the body on the way out, so retreat still carries a physical bill. Over rounds, that alters movement psychology. A fighter who usually exits with confidence starts exiting with hesitation. Hesitant exits are slower. Slower exits are invitations, and Benavidez accepts invitations immediately. His corner work supports this style with unusual clarity. Between rounds, the guidance is typically short, direct, and actionable. No clutter, no speeches, just sharp reminders about leaking guard positions and which side the feet must close. Because his system is built on accumulation, those clean cues are enough. You can often watch the correction appear in the opening minute of the next round. A missed body lane becomes a disciplined return to that same lane. A defender who kept slipping outside the jab suddenly finds that outside door closed by foot position and a waiting hook. That continuity is the difference between pressure and chaos. Chaos burns energy for noise. Continuity invests energy for control. Late in fights, opponents are not only hurt, they are mentally taxed by constant defensive decisions under shrinking time. Decision fatigue becomes a weapon in David Benavidez fights. When the mind overloads, guard discipline turns jumpy. Hands react to the nearest threat, not the most dangerous one. Benavidez exploits that with calm precision. He flashes high to trigger panic cover, then drives to the body while elbows lag behind. He leans on the body to draw the dip, then snaps the right hand through the center before gloves reconnect. He keeps repeating these exchanges until defense stops being a system and becomes survival. That is the real collapse. Not one dramatic blast, but the gradual loss of organized resistance. By the time a referee steps close or a corner considers the towel, the visible damage is only the surface result. The deeper break came earlier when exits were denied, posture was bent, and choices narrowed to bad options. That is why David Benavidez at his best can feel violent and inevitable at the same time. He does not just overwhelm opponents. He removes the conditions they need to solve him. A fight can turn onto something as small as a forearm placed across the chest before a pivot ever develops. A glove touch can interrupt timing so cleanly that the counter dies before it leaves the shoulder. A hard jab into the guard might not score for the crowd, yet it can pin both hands long enough for the next shot to arrive where the block no longer exists. That is the craft people overlook when they reduce David Benavidez to raw activity. Plenty of fighters throw in bunches, but Benavidez treats each punch like a setup with a receipt due later. He is rarely finished when a combination ends, because his feet are already set for the next decision. The lead foot keeps taking outside ground, and the rear foot follows in compact steps that seal the angle behind it. Opponents feel space shrinking before they understand why they cannot escape. The ring still looks open, but the useful lanes disappear. In those moments, David Benavidez goes to the body for more than pain. He is not only hunting ribs or liver, he is trying to alter posture, breath, and rhythm in the same exchange. A shot near the elbow line tightens the torso and shortens the next stride. A dig around the belt line can freeze the hips just long enough to steal initiative upstairs. That half beat is all he needs, because his next punch is already loaded while the guard is still reorganizing. After a few sequences, defenders stop reading what is coming and start reacting to what just hurt. That is where his offense becomes mercilessly intelligent. He will show the same body right hand twice, then split the middle with an uppercut once the gloves collapse inward. He will hook the arm to pin it, then drive a straight shot through the center while the opponent waits for another loop. Each layer creates urgency, and urgency creates habits. Once reactions become habits, David Benavidez can predict them almost on command. Against movers, he does not burn energy chasing highlights. He stalks at a measured pace that keeps his base under him and his shoulders ready. When the target circles, he turns with short, balanced steps instead of lunging. His eyes stay level, which is why misses do not pull him out of stance. He does not punch himself tall, and he does not overreach into empty air. Even failed shots leave him in position to defend, touch, and re-enter. There is no dramatic reset that grants the other corner a free breath. Clinches do not break his rhythm either. Inside the tie-up, he frames with the forearm, nudges for inches, and sneaks compact shots before the referee can separate them. Then he is back on the chest, walking his man into the same narrow geography. Round after round, that reliability drains opponents in a different way than a single knockout threat. One bomb can be anticipated, slipped, or smothered. Relentless problem solving is harder to survive because it keeps changing shape while staying true to purpose. By the middle rounds, choices get uglier. Hold and lose ground or move and run into the next line of fire. Shell up and absorb body wear or drop the elbows and invite the head attack. Answer back in the pocket and risk being beaten to the second and third punch every time. To casualize, the momentum shift can look sudden when damage finally shows. In reality, the collapse has been building quietly for minutes. Legs are taxed from exits that never fully open. Arms are numbed from impact absorbed on gloves and forearms. Breathing is compromised by body contact that did not always look dramatic on replay. So when the finishing burst arrives, it often is not a new gear at all. It is accumulated pressure collecting interest. Defensively, sound fighters begin crossing their feet on exits. They start reaching from too far out or leaning straight back with the chin climbing into danger. Those are not random mistakes made in isolation. They are symptoms of time compression, and David Benavidez is one of the best in the sport at creating that compression. Every exchange carries a sequel with him. If he lands, he is already stepping into your stance before the thought settles. If you block him, he is changing levels while your guard is still committed to the first look. If you tie him up, he is framing for the restart before the break is complete. David Benavidez fights like unanswered moments offend him. Eventually, opponents stop asking useful questions and start negotiating damage. That is the center of his ring warfare. Layered volume occupies the hands. Foot pressure redraws the map. Exit denial keeps consequences directly in front of you. Put together, it is not reckless chaos. It is control delivered at a pace that feels chaotic only to the man trapped inside it. And once David Benavidez secures that control, the guard may still be visible, but the structure holding it together is already failing. Sometimes the most important punch David Benavidez throws is not a punch at all, but a firm post on the chest that arrests a pivot before it can begin. That touch does not earn a highlight, yet it buys control of the next exchange. He will show the jab high to freeze the eyes, then slide the next one lower to the sternum or shoulder, where it acts like a pin more than a strike. In that brief pin, he steps his lead foot outside and redraws the lane. The pressure spikes in that instant, because angle is now working for him and against the man in front of him. With outside lead position, the right hand travels cleaner, and the left hook can bend around the guard instead of crashing into it. Now the defender is not merely blocking leather, he is trying to reclaim lost geography. David Benavidez reads that panic in real time. If the rear foot widens for escape, he drives straight through center. If the front shoulders dips for a spin, he punches across the turn and meets the exit with violence. From ringside, it looks like pure aggression. Underneath, it is route management. A second layer of his craft is cadence inside the combination. He does not throw every shot at one tempo. He might fire 2 quick punches, pause for half a beat with a measuring touch, then detonate again before the guard can settle. That tiny delay baits early reactions. Defenders brace for the next punch too soon, open a seam, and by the time they reclose, the 4th and 5th shots are already arriving between glove and elbow. It is one reason replay can understate what happened. You see gloves catching impact, but not how each impact displaces the guard for the next impact. His bodywork follows the same principle of accumulated compromise. He is not always loading full hooks into the ribs. Often it is a short thud under the elbow, compact and ugly, thrown while his head stays calm in the pocket. Those touches force hard decisions. Drop the elbow and he lifts the right hand upstairs. Keep the elbow high and he keeps feeding the body until posture rises and exits lose bite. Over rounds, the bill appears first in balance, not expression. Opponents start leaving exchanges taller than they entered them. Their pivots lose traction and their feet stop gripping the canvas with conviction. The guard can remain disciplined, but the platform under it is no longer spring-loaded. That is where David Benavidez becomes especially dangerous. He can throw 6, recover his base, and still beat you to the reset for 7. His recovery between punches is a quiet weapon. After the right hand, his hips return underneath him almost immediately. Many volume fighters get stretched and need a reset step to become safe again. Benavidez recoils into stance while he is still punching, which keeps offense and balance alive at the same time. So when an opponent finally carves out a counter window, that window is already shrinking. If the counter misses, the response is usually instant and punishing, because he treats your miss as permission to continue the sentence. There is also a mental squeeze in the way he reacts after being clipped. He rarely gives the visual reward of retreat that opponents crave. He may blink, roll, or catch, then answer immediately, sometimes with nothing more than a jab and shoulder nudge that says the exchange still belongs to him. That small reply carries weight. Fighters build confidence through cause and effect, and David Benavidez keeps breaking that chain. You land and expect a pause, but no pause appears. You circle and expect air, but no clear lane opens. You shell and expect a lull, but the lull never comes. By the late rounds, uncertainty drains as much energy as the punches themselves. What looks like a sudden avalanche is usually the end of a long campaign against comfort. His feet removed the map. His jab stole clean posture. His layered volume stole rhythm. Once rhythm is gone, defensive discipline turns into guessing. That is the true collapse point in many Benavidez fights. Not the first dramatic right hand, but the moment the opponent can no longer rank the threats in front of him. From there, each choice is late, every exit is crowded, and every breath carries a decision tax already accruing for rounds. David Benavidez applies brutal pressure, but it is not random pressure. It is systematic erosion. He is not just trying to hurt opponents in bursts. He is dismantling a defensive operating system in public, one forced compromise at a time.